$1,214. Plan for 25-26 under the heading of outflow for financial activities on page 566 differs from the amount appearing in note 7A 57 on page 579 of $379,655 under the heading borrowing repayments. Why is there a difference between these two amounts of $57,000?
This appears to reflect the accounting timing differences between the principal payment schedules and the budgeted cash flow estimates. I also refer you to the answer I gave you regarding the loan for the DMCYC in the May council meeting.
Sorry, you're very quick there. What did you say?
This appears to reflect the account timing differences between the principal repayment schedules and the budgeted cash flow estimates. I also refer to my previous answer given to, I think it was at the May council meeting or perhaps the June special council meeting on the budget.
Sorry, I missed the last bit. I must be going deaf. What did you say in the last bit about the June council meeting?
I also answered this question previously at the June special council meeting. Yes.
I didn't ask that question. I've never asked it.
Question 9, Mr. Hearn.
Employee costs. It's noted in less than 1 month the allocation for employee costs have increased without explanation by $293,225. What is the reason for the increased allocation? And then the second part of the question, I did raise a question relating to employee cost savings due to delays in filling vacant items. It remains unanswered or even acknowledged as an issue. We now have 3 vacancies in 25-26. Does the Shire understand that savings do occur due to delays in filling vacant items? Have any savings been identified in the 25 and 25-26 employee cost budget due to delays in filling vacant items? If not, why not?
The increase of $293,000 in salaries reflects new positions outlined in the Workforce Plan 2025 to 2029. These include positions in ICT, payroll, assets, waste parks and the Dalyellup Multipurpose Community Youth Centre staffing. Savings from current vacancies are factored into the broader employee cost projections. However, due to recruitment timing and reserve usage, savings are not necessarily in the net budget reduction. Savings do not necessarily mean a net budget reduction. The employee cost reserve is being used in part to mitigate this variation.
Okay, thanks. Grant subsidies and contributions. In the space of less than 1 month, the grant subsidies and contribution has been reduced by budget has been reduced by $234,000. What items have been deleted from the original 25-26 budget?
There's probably more to your question there. There's a fair bit more after that.
To read it?
Yeah, just read it and I can provide you that summarised answer. Mr.
So at the Boyne Up draft budget meeting, the following question was asked. The 2025-26 budget indicates that $4.062 million will be received via grant subsidies and contributions. What items, including the Commonwealth Assistance Grant, made up the budget allocation? The question was taken on notice and still remains unanswered, other than the comment that it was thought the Commonwealth Assistance Grant budget may be $2.95 million. We now know the budget estimate for the Commonwealth Grants Assistance. We now know the budget estimate for the Commonwealth Grants Assistance. When will the Shire be able to confirm what the Commonwealth Grant Assistance Grant actually is? Have any Commonwealth Assistance Grants for 2025-26 been received this financial year? If so, how much?
Thank you, Mr. Hearn. So response for the direct grant being $234,000 is from the State Government Direct Grant. This has been moved from operating to capital to reflect the purpose of that grant. Sorry, I've just lost
operating to capital.
Sorry? Yeah, so the state government direct grant's been moved from operating to capital, given it's a capital grant. It's the purpose of the grant is to fund capital works.
Right. So where do I find that?
I'll get to that. The grant subsidies and contributions. So the Commonwealth Financial Assistance Grant is $2,951,000, and 50% of that has been paid. Other operating grants include Bushfire Brigade operating grants, bushfire risk mitigation grants, contiguous local authority group mosquito control grant, and the coastal hazard reduction grant. This is all outlined in account schedule 15.9.3.
Thank you. And in the data presented in the budget for 25-26 to be considered tonight, it's also noted that in relation to grants, subsidies and contributions, that under the heading of operating activities, grants, subsidies and contribution on page 566, they are shown as 3.794 million, but under the statement of cash flows on page 565, grants and subsidies are shown as 3.828, so there's a $34,000 difference. And what's the reason for that?
This reflects the timing between recognition and the actual receipts of the funds.
So when you say that, I mean, is one a cash figure and one an accrual figure? I mean, is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Oh. Okay. Interest revenue 24-25. Basically, we were told the draft budget on June 18 was 1.206 million, and we were told, and I was told in June that it's been revised to 1.348 million. So questions raised at the Boyne Up Draft 25-26 budget meeting in relation to interest revenue was taken on notice and not answered. At the June 25 OCM, I again sought clarification and was advised by the acting presiding member that the current interest revenue forecast for 24-25 is now estimated at 1.348 million. Assuming my question was answered correctly at the June 25 OCM, and we accept that 1.345 million may be the correct figure for interest revenue in 24-25 and not the 1.206 million shown in the 25-26 budget, will it now throw the 25-26 budget into surplus? If not, why not?
So the interest revenue for 24-25, the estimate was updated and noted. The $142,000 difference has...
What did you say, the first bit?
The estimate is updated and noted. The $142,000 difference has been incorporated into the revised carry forward calculation.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's good news. So we're now in surplus of 142. Is that right?
For
So if you've made the adjustment, the budget is now in surplus by 142,650. Is it?
no.
Why?
Well, that'll be finalised as the accounts come through from June, which will be presented to the next council meeting. There's a number of other carry forward figures which council need to consider there.
So you said the carry forward figure for 24-25 has been increased by $145,000, 142,650. So surely, if that's you presented a zero budget tonight, so if you've got another $142,000 in there, it must be in surplus. Can't be anything else.
Well, I said it's incorporated into tonight's budget.
Well, is tonight's budget still a zero balance budget, or is it?
Yes, so as presented, yes.
I think we're on a different way.
It was incorporated into the figures of 24-25.
Yes.
So it'll be carried forward. So it's known as part of tonight's budget consideration.
Oh, so it'll be considered as part of the budget, whether it's in surplus or not. Is that what you're saying?
Well, the budget presented tonight is a zero surplus budget.
But if you've got another 100...
Your next question, Mr Hearn.
But seriously, Mr President, I mean...
Mr Hearn.
This is a pretty simple question.
And I've answered it to you multiple times. Next question, please.
Yeah, well, yeah. After reading the 31st of May 25 financial report, we now know that interest revenue received to May 31st, 25 totals 1.053 million. The report also indicates that nearly 26.37 million is invested in 10 separate term deposit accounts at rates of between 4.03 and 5.25% for terms ranging from 1 to 11 months, most of which will mature during the 24-25 financial year. Using the back of an envelope calculation, interest revenue earnings will now be closer to 1.417 million. Can you please advise how accurate the answer given at the June 25 OCM was, and should not the actual 25-26 budget figure, 24-25 budget figure be closer to 1.4? If not, why not?
The May figures do show a $1.053 million earned. The final receipts to June 30th and the rollover maturities were used to refine the estimates going forward. A conservative approach of 1.348 million. The advice from staff is that it remains prudent given the economic outlook and investment timing.
Okay. Reserve accounts, the change of title from employee leave reserve to an employee cost reserve. Section 611 of the Local Government Act provides for the ability of a local government to set aside money for use for a purpose in a future financial year. It also details the necessity of one month's notice of a proposed change of purpose or proposed use of a reserve. Notice is not required where the change or purpose of a proposed use has been disclosed in the annual budget. It is proposed to implement the change, that is employee leave reserve to employee cost reserve, as part of the 25-26 budget. There is limited commentary on the proposed change in use, and that's on page 546, 560 and 582. The note on 546 indicates that further explanation commentary can be found in the Workforce Plan 202529. So that I'm better informed as to the reasons for the change, can you direct me to where I can find mention and an explanation of the employee cost reserve in the Workforce Plan 202529?
The change in reserve title and the purpose is explained on page 456 of the agenda. If the Director of Community and Corporate has anything further, though, that question.
Thank you for your question, Mr Hearn. Through the Chair, as the Shire President mentioned, the change of naming of that particular reserve is done in line with the annual budget adoption of tonight. So it is compliant in terms of how we can do the terminology change on that particular reserve. The reference to that reserve being in connection with the workforce plan is about basically talking about the funding mechanism to support the new positions coming online from a workforce planning perspective. And that's probably what I'd like to say on the matter at this point.
Thanks. So it's not in there. Thanks. The leave reserve was initially established to fund accrued leave entitlements for redundancies, retirements, leave transfers to other local governments, and leave entitlements paid each year. The employee's cost reserve, as the Director just says, appears to have been established to manage employee cost variations in the budget, which is quite different. From the limited information available, it would appear that the purpose of the change in use is to expense employee leave liability to the annual budget in the year that the expense occurs. Is that correct?
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Thank you for your question, Mr Hearn. Through the Chair, in the annual budget, it details the purpose of that reserve.
Sorry?
The detail in the annual budget details the purpose of that reserve that's set for this financial year onwards.
That's not the question I asked. Is it the intent of the reserve? I'll just read it again. From the limited information available, it would appear that the purpose of the change in use is to extend employees' leave liability to the annual budget in the year that the expense occurs. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. Leave liability is included within the salaries component in the annual budget.
So, leave liability is?
Leave liability is included in the annual budget in the salaries component. It's costed within the salaries component.
So yes, so you are expensing the leave liability to the annual budget?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, I think you said no, you weren't.
Sorry,
so
I misunderstood the question, but we are, yes.
You are, okay. Okay, thank you. Given the Shire's value of honesty and accountability and the quite obvious change in the purpose of the reserve fund, is a more detailed explanation required? Should the proposed change be dealt with in the annual budget by a separate decision of Council and by either a majority or absolute majority, or is the change in purpose of the reserve covered off by one of the existing recommendations? If so, which recommendation?
So, as answered, the change in the reserve title and purpose is explained on 546 of the agenda. And this has been disclosed in the annual budget in compliance with Section 6.11 of the Local Government Act 1995. A separate council decision is not required when it is handled as part of the budget adoption process.
Okay, so it's not in any particular recommendation? I think
No, it's part of adoption of the budget.
Yeah. Any particular one, or just
Sorry?
any particular one? Which recommendation?
Well, as part of adopting the budget, as part of the suite of recommendations for council, it'll be included as part of that when it adopts the full schedule of accounts.
Okay, so no particular one. Okay, thank you. Interest revenue 25-26. The question raised at the Boyne-up draft budget meeting and again for the July OCM in relation to the interest budget revenue of 1.06 million for 25-26 still remains largely unanswered. However, we now know that 157,000 will be raised from interest on rates late payment charges. This effectively means that only 904,000 has been budgeted to be received from term deposits and at call funds on hand at 30 June. These funds on hand at 30 June are currently estimated in the 25-26 budget at 26.041 million, without even considering the 19.4 million that we're flowing into the Shire progressively from September 25 from rates. This effectively means the Shire is only budgeting to receive a return of about 3.45% from its on-call and term deposit funds in 25-26. This is even more puzzling when accounts to the 31st of May indicate that over $10 million is reinvested in term deposits at interest rates of between 4.38 and 4.98 with maturity dates in 25-26. And a further 5.189 million could also be invested at 4.05. Furthermore, an additional 10 million in term deposits matured in June 25, the majority of which would have been rolled over into term deposits at rates exceeding 4%. So with the cash rate currently at 3.85% and likely to drop to around 3.5% by December 25, and with term deposits currently available with AA banks at more than 4%, can I be so bold to ask again for a third time, how did the Shire arrive at its conservative budget estimate based on its monthly cash flows that must have been completed as part of the budget process, and what average cash in the Shire planning to what average cash is the Shire planning to hold in 25-26, and what average interest rates did the Shire use to calculate its 25-26 interest revenue target?
I'll refer to the answers I gave you in question 11, Mr. Hayne.
Question 1 was 24-25, this is 25-26. Completely different question.
You did answer it. Question 11. I did give you that answer, Mr. Hayne. The 25-26 estimate one. Maybe I missed that. Apologies, that's my apologies. So the figure of 157,657 from the late payment charges is from the later change and assumes an average return of 3.45%. While the term deposit rates were high during 24-25, the budget takes a conservative view on the likely rates decline through 25-26. Apologies, I thought I'd read that out, sorry.
I guess the question I asked is, what rate did you use for the 25-26 budget to arrive at your target?
As I said, it assumes an average return of 3.45%.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And I've got here questions not answered, not addressed or answered, and that was, why was the Peppermint Grove Beach Oval left out of the turf management program recently awarded to Naturalist Turf on May 28, 2025?
The recent tender was organised for sports turf maintenance and did not include passive recreational services, so it was more targeted towards our active sports spaces.
Okay. Roberts Road remediation resurfacing work. The Director of Corporate and Community promised to respond with the latest update. Haven't received anything yet.
What's been provided to me is that the road construction, I think this is based on your previous questions.
Sorry.
I think there's three answers here, and I think it's based on your previous questions.
I haven't asked one about that.
Sorry?
I haven't asked one about Roberts Road. I asked it at the Boyne-up draft meeting.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's based on your previous question. So what I have here is the road construction was completed in February 2024, and the superintendent was the previous manager of the parks, facilities and assets. At this time, it did meet the construction contract standards. 2, since November 2024, small deformations, undulations and bleeding in the asphalt surface were noticed in several locations. And then 3, in February 2025, the defects and liability period expired, and further investigation is occurring to determine the failure mode and magnitude, which will identify the basis for any recourse with the construction contractor that the Shire may pursue.
Thank you, Mr President. And finally, I did ask it again at Boynup, explanation of the components that made up the 5.34% increase in rubbish charges.
The 5.34% increase is made up of the separate indices that form part of the rise and fall clause within the South West Regional Waste Management Services contract.
And specifically, if you recall, you were there, I did ask for tonnages and which percentage was applied to which, and still haven't heard anything.
Yeah. Factors like that, labour, fuel, all that factor into the rise and fall clauses of that contract. And that's what the Shire takes into consideration.
Increased tonnage?
Sorry?
Increased tonnage? Still don't know.
As I said, waste rates do factor into that.
Thanks for trying, Mr President.
Thanks, Mr. And Mr. Dr. Don Finlay.
Good evening, Council and President Kitchen. I guess my previous question 2 from June 25th meeting was tabled. Is there a response to that question?
Yes, those responses were provided in the front of tonight's agenda. Section 3 of tonight's report. Questions on notice. The answers are published there.
So from the
Yes.
25th, that's in the agenda? Okay, thank you.
Those answers should have also been sent directly to you.
Didn't see it. But
Okay, we'll double check that.
Okay. I had the 2 questions for submission that went late to council. Do you want me to present those?
Yeah, they were provided late, but yeah, I'm happy for you to read them out, but we'll probably take them on notice. But if you'd like to read them out, that's fine.
I don't have my copy in front of me, but
Okay. Well, we can take them on notice, and we'll publish them in the minutes and provide an answer there as well.
yeah, my only comment is that they both pertain to infrastructure at Boynup Sales Yards.
Sure.
And
Right.
the one is shelter overhead from sun and rain and elements, and the second question pertains to footing and slippage, when that will be changed. Unfortunately,
So yeah, thank you, Doctor. We've got those. We'll take them
Yeah.
on notice.
unfortunately, members of the public are providing photographs to me of issues there, and I don't run around taking photos at Boynup Sales Yards, but it will, in all likelihood, be at the state upper house again, as was the issue with a Facebook ABC presentation on
All right. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah.
Finlay. Thank you.
That's for information.
All right. Are there any further public questions? Yes, sir. Just approach the lectern. Just your name and locality you live in for the record, please. Oh, sure. Just the lectern, please.
Yeah, Richard Lee, Timperley Street, Boynup. A lot of the members of our street like an update on what's happening with the tiny houses project, and we'd like to know if there's any near future plans to open up Timperley Street again with the new subdivision going in behind us.
So, as you might be aware, the public consultation on the tiny homes development closed back in June. Officers are assessing those submissions. There's no definitive date of when that development will be provided to council for consideration. Residents will be notified, though, when it is coming to council for consideration. In terms of Timperley Street, I'll have to take that one on notice to provide you a proper answer.
All right, well, thanks very much.
Sure. Director, did you have anything further you might want to add on to that one, or cover that for now?
Certainly not in terms of Timberley Street. I'll need to take that on notice as well and provide a follow-up. In respect to the tiny homes, the Shire President is right, it's still under active review. There are matters that were raised through the submissions, particularly from government agencies, that are unresolved, and it's with the applicant now to come up with solutions in respect to that. As soon as we have a solution, the matter will be brought back to council.
No worries. And the council will let us know. And
That's right, yes.
all right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. All right, are there any further questions? No? All right, applications for leave of absence? Oh. That a question, is it Tony? Sure. Is it a question or?
It's not a question. I did apply to the office to speak to the council, and they assured me that it was the right form that I'd filled in, but there you are.
Sure, sorry, I didn't see that, but I'm aware of what you. But I'll just move to another section where it'll be more appropriate. I'll try and get there as fast as I can. Just
That's okay.
if you're happy to stand there for 30 seconds.
Yes, certainly.
Sorry. All right, applications for leave of absence. Councillor Terence-Roy? August. Councillor Terence-Roy for August. Councillor McCleary? Councillor Dillon? Any further requests? Right, can I please have a mover that council approve a leave of absence request from Councillor Terence-Roy for August, Councillor McCleary for August and Councillor Dillon for August and September, moved by the Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ferguson? No discussion? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Declarations of interest, I've received none. Are there any late declarations? No. There's no notice of items to be discussed behind closed doors. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of council from June 2025, moved by Councillor Ferguson. Seconder, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wouldn't normally speak to the adoption of the minutes, but I just wanted to say publicly that it was a privilege to actually chair the meeting on that occasion, and I would like to express my thanks to the councillors present for giving me the good grace to conduct what seemed to be a reasonably orderly meeting. It went on for a long while, but that wasn't necessarily the cause of councillors. I think there was a few issues like has occurred this evening. But I also wanted to take the opportunity to give particular thanks to a council staff member. All staff were fantastic, but in particular to who's present here tonight, Tyler Shipley. I just want to acknowledge publicly the great assistance she was to me from an administrative and guidance point of view, and any credit I might have gained from chairing the meeting was indeed in large part due to her contribution, and I just want to express that publicly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor McCleary.
Got nothing to add.
Is there any discussion for or against those minutes? No. Anything further from the mover?
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll put those to the vote. Those in favour? Those minutes are carried unanimous. Announcements by the presiding member without discussion. I do have a few, but I'll allow Ms Steinbrenner to make her presentation in this forum.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of the Capel CWA, Country Women's Association, we would like to take this opportunity to say thank you to the council for the support that we've received from them over the last, well, we moved into the Seniors Citizens Centre in February 24, and in the last couple of months we've had the opportunity to put some of our memorabilia and our honour boards up in the rooms themselves, and we also have been allotted a room to set up for storage, which is going to make our life a heck of a lot easier. So we do appreciate that, and we'd like to say thank you to the council for that. Also, their ongoing support for the Capel Road Safety Action Group. So I just take this opportunity to present a certificate to the Shire of Capel to say thank you very much for all the support we've received.
Thank you very much.
Take my leave. I've had a very long day. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much to the CWA. As someone who's been to a few morning teas at that building with the CWA, probably say I don't need to go to many more. Oh, they're a good show. All right, moving on to a few other announcements. I'd just like to re-highlight the 5 staff from the Shire who were recently awarded Meritorious Service Awards at the Walga Local Government Awards, being Erin Lockheed, Vicky Davis, Andrew Mataboni, Jodie Reedman and Anita Scott, all long-time employees with a combined service tenure of over 135 years. Thanks to these staff for their ongoing service and dedication to our community. It was also a pleasure to receive on behalf of the Shire the Roadwise Recognised Award for the South West region, acknowledging the ongoing work and advocacy in promoting road safety initiatives across the district. It shows the Shire's continuing investment in road safety and infrastructure improvements, which has been recognised as some of the best in the local government sector, and it's through forums such as the Capel Road Safety Action Group that was just mentioned by the CWA that things like that are possible. So thank you to everyone on that. And secondly, just like to introduce to the community the Acting CEO, Mr. Gary Clark. More details will be provided in the future regarding ongoing arrangements and Council's process for advertising and filling the substantive CEO position. But welcome to the Shire, Mr. Clark. All right, there are no petitions, deputations or presentations, and there's no motions of which previous notice has been given, and no questions of which previous notice has been given. We move to Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1, RV Park Development Project, Pointer. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Noonan. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll move the motion as read, as presented. But I'd just like to perhaps ask a question or make an observation that in point 1, where it says supports the investigation of an RV park development in Boyanup based on data and findings from the Land and Reserve audit, and identify potential sites with the intention of RV camping, whether that will also, that audit would also provide an opportunity for the people who are doing it to consider other potential land uses. So, for example, recognition and earmarking or highlighting land that might make a good aged care facility or dog park or and so on and so forth.
I believe that's the intention of the audit. It might not specifically say this is a site for aged care, but it might say this is a site for potential commercial activities in line with our local planning scheme. Am I correct in that? Yep.
Yeah, oh good. Okay, that's good. That's good to get confirmation. I think that this is a a very important process. I think that we have actually done this very well. I acknowledge and appreciate that there has been a lot of frustration, or that there's a lot of people who would like to have seen an outcome arrive sooner. But I think that it's a far better situation in the course that we are on, that we arrive at an RV, a location which is acceptable for most of the community, as opposed to one which is going to upset a very large proportion of the community. I think that it's an important asset that we're looking at developing. It's important to reassure the people of Boyanup that that the best outcome for Boyanup is the best outcome for the Shire. Okay, so Boyanup is not going to have something imposed upon that community by the rest of the Shire. It's going to be an asset which where the interests of the community, the Boyanup community, are very much front and centre of that consideration. So I'd like to endorse the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Tarrant-Troy.
I have nothing to add.
Are there any speakers against the motion? Speakers for? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'll be supporting the motion, but it seems to me that we need to be realistic about this. We've gone on a very, very large circuitous route and ended up where we started from. Huge energy. You look at the reports and the consultation and the briefings and the this and the that and the to and the fro, and what have we got? Nothing. We're right back where we started from. We've embarked upon a very worthwhile project of identifying and assessing and the land or land use that might be available to the council. But when you say, when it's suggested that the community was against this, I would say it's a community that is equal parts for and against it. Now, in page 36 of the report, I mean, there's other barcodes and graphs in the report as well. One of the most comprehensive and readable reports I've seen presented to council, and great credit to staff as a consequence. But it says, would you support the proposed location at the rear of the Hugh Kilpatrick Memorial Hall on Bridge Street, primarily on a road reserve? Responses: yes, 58.62, no, 41.38. Now, if you were a candidate standing for election in whatever format, and you got nearly 60% of the vote or more, you'd be jumping through the hoops. That's a very strong endorsement from a significant group in the community. Yet somehow that's been construed into, oh no, we don't want it. Well, you don't want it, you're not going to get it. So this is one example when Boyanup got what it wanted again, somehow. But the majority of the respondents didn't get what they wanted. And I find this very curious. I support the motion because in the end, the friction this has all caused is almost not unbelievable, but it's actually quite tragic that the community has ended up not split down the middle, but split. And don't suggest that they're evenly divided. They're not. There's other graphs in there that conflict somewhat with this presentation, but the point is that over 60% of the community was prepared to support it, or 60% of the community was prepared to support it, and that original location. So we ended up where we started from. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers to the item? Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the councillors. They've already spoken. Yeah, look, it's been a long long-winded, windy way to get to here. There's a couple of things in here that I commend in the way this options come out, and that's looking at alternatives of maybe a third party getting involved with it. As such, being a retired caravan user and such, I don't put as much emphasis into the dump point as where I stay the night. There's lots of places I've stayed that don't have a dump point, and I think our biggest focus in here is to actually look at where we can have an RV park and have people stay, and that brings people to the community. And some of that is just to see highlighting what does Boyanup have to offer. We're getting too caught up in the twos and fro's of something that's well, the dump point is a costly item. It's got lots of areas that it needs to look at to be feasible and not blow our budget. It's constrained. Apart from that, if we've got other parties getting involved and setting up something, it will be a good outcome. I'm going to support it, but I think we still need to have in mind that maybe the dump point won't eventuate.
Are there any further speakers to the item? Oh no, I just can't let it go without having to say. So I better say some things. Look, I appreciate what's been said. I think it's Boyanup's a very interesting and unique community. Very, very passionate about their area. You know, and you just look back in history. You know, we're talking about the site that was originally proposed behind the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall. Well, there's still bad blood in the water from just about choosing the location of where the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall now stands today, and whether it should have had badminton courts or tennis courts or various other things in there. So that still gets brought up even to this day. So it's a very passionate and very caring community. So that's something we need to make sure we work through. But look, the audit itself, I think, is a brilliant idea. In general, isolating it from the RV park and the dump point, that sort of stuff, it's something we do need to do. And there's a broader scope in there in terms of other land, not the RV dump point, but like, you know, we've got all these road reserves sitting around with no roads on them. They're never going to be roads because they're just full of trees, you know, but there's still a responsibility for local government to maintain those. So what's the better path forward? Is it selling it to the nearby landowners, turning it into a nature corridor? My personal preference is the Shire holds them but uses them some sort of offset, whether we can do that, rather than how we're chucking money into locations outside of the district for environmental offsets, but that's a different conversation, and I won't go down that line. So I think there's certainly some great stuff that's going to come out of that. But pulling back to the dump point, because that's the crux of the issue, I think there's no denying that the community is wanting something, and I honestly think, you know, it will happen, and I really hope that it's something we can get to sooner rather than later, because this should have been done before the Ring Road, before the William Dandy was done, because you're coming from Perth and you're going to the Southern Forests. Boyanup's the first town you come to after you've left Perth where you slow down to 40 k's an hour. And there's been talk about Boyanup's tourism development, tourism potential, and there's certainly stuff there. You know, the South West Rail heritage and the town's heritage itself sell it. It's a junction. Treat it like that. People come there, they stop there for a few hours, have a coffee, go to the bakery, go to the shop, whatever, and move on. Boyanup really needs to capitalise on that. And a facility such as that, this certainly has the ability to do that. So I'm wanting to see this done sooner rather than later. But I think the crux of the issue here isn't so much the audit, it's not so much the dump point. It's actually a bit of us making sure we've got the basics right in terms of our planning. You know, we're working through that now with our long-term financial plan to come to us next month. We need to make sure that projects like this are planned for. There's good community backing in the plan. There's community consultation done well before we throw money at it, before we start going out trying to do it. And I think we sort of had that almost with the Fettlers Park upgrade, where the dump point was originally going to go. I honestly still think that's the best place for it to go, being the main centre point for community. You're in a park, you're in the centre of town, dump point's there's a pull-in bay already existing there. To me, that's the best place. But that's not what we're here to discuss anyway, so I'll stop hogging the floor on that one. But yeah, I support the motion. And let's just make sure we get the basics in order first before we start moving forward with projects like this, which certainly have a strong community attachment and interest in them. All right, are there any further speakers? Councillor Noon, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to the councillors who've spoken. I think Buoyantup is certainly has that potential to capitalise as the first cab off or first destination off the highway. But I think we've got to recognise that that the people of Buoyantup are not transitory people, that they have very, very deep roots. And that's why I'm really pleased with the audit, and I hope that it finds a suitable site where perhaps the Shire might be able to see a future aged care cottage homes type arrangement built. I think that would be a wonderful asset that is different from the aged care facilities that Bethany provides in Dalyellup because of the nature of Buoyantup. That's but I'd pick up on Councillor Ferguson's comment that we've been on a circuitous route, to perhaps quote T.S. Eliot, in that we shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimous. 13.2, Shire President Feedback Report, Alga National General Assembly. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor McCleary, seconded. Councillor Dillon. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for the report. Quite comprehensive, and I look forward to some future outcomes out of that.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Thank you for representing us over east at the big shebang, along with Deputy President and our Director of Infrastructure and Development, Matt Young. No doubt flying the flag beautifully for our agribusiness precinct and our land deconstruction needs. So, yes, like Councillor McCleary just said, looking forward to seeing how things track as we move on. But a good report, and I'd encourage everyone to have a read.
Are there any other speakers for or against the item? No. Councillor McCleary, wish to close? I'll pull that to the vote. Those in favour? Sorry, I didn't see. All those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Infrastructure and Development Reports 14.1, Amendment number 3, Omnibus to the Local Planning Scheme number 8 for recommendation and final approval. Is there a mover for that item? The Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ferguson. The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to say I'm very pleased with the changes. Obviously, Council initiated this amendment back in October last year, so this has gone through the process of going out to consultation, and obviously all the submissions are there as well. Now it's up to Council to give final endorsement for it to be referred to the WAPC for approval. But I must say, some of the things that I often deal with in regards to our local planning scheme in relation to the sorry, so have I got you off onto? No. All right. I just think some of the key standout things here, which are often red tape or constraints that I come across when dealing with residents in regards to the envelopes and the also the water requirements or water storage requirements, particularly on those properties under 4,000 square metres. I think there's been quite a few residents caught out by essentially the 130,000 litre requirement, or if they are having additional dwellings on the site, not being able to recognise the work from or what the current infrastructure is that's established on the site. So I think that's a really good adjustment as well. So yeah, as a whole, I'm very happy with where we've come from. The actual changes between when we advertised and where we are now is literally just, I think, just for clarity and a bit of rewording as well. So, yeah, very happy to support the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr Shire President. I'm happy to endorse the Deputy Shire President's comments, so I can't add any more to it. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the recommendation? Speakers for? The Deputy President wish to close?
No, that I was just a little bit put off because everyone sort of quickly looked at me, sort of like I was talking about the wrong item, and I was second guessing myself for a moment. But so yeah, but I don't need to add anything else there. I don't think. I think the key things for me is that the building envelope and those changes to the requirement around water, and I do respect some of the feedback from DBCA around the building envelopes, but inevitably any clearing of any sort in those developments obviously needs to be accompanied by a clearing permit. So I think there is sufficient mechanisms in place to deal with those types of things through the planning process. Adding the residential building to the land use table is a bit surprising, but I think it was controversial at the time with who was actually responsible for the approval of residential buildings, particularly when the state government amended the Planning and Development Act basically to take away a lot of that from local government, and essentially any home or dwelling on a certain size block is really actually bypasses council, not actually the local government, but forcing local governments to have that delegation to the CEO and the administration. So yeah, very happy to endorse the officer's recommendation and send this to WAPC for approval.
All right, all those in favour? That's carried unanimous. 14.2, request for tender 2506, Shire of Capel Facilities Cleaning Services. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Mogg. Seconder. Councillor Dillon. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. I read the motion as read. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, look, I understand there was questions from the gallery about getting an external contractor to account for these matters, but look, it does make a lot of sense. They can deal with the any sort of staffing issues, and we can just go about the business of council. I believe there was only the one applicant, but apparently they tick all the boxes, so that's a good thing. So let's move ahead and put the motion to the vote.
Are there any speakers for or against the item? No. Councillor Mogg, anything further? No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried unanimous. 14.3, request for tender 2505, Tree Management Services. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terrantroy. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion as read.
Councillor Terrantroy.
Oh, just to say, they're the same provider that we've been using for a while now, and they do an exceptional job. So no worries with this.
Are there any speakers for or against the item? Councillor Ferguson.
I'd just like to comment, Mr Shire President, and thank you, is that it appears that because we're managing it in this longer term basis, we're actually saving money. Is that the implication I get from the report? Is that correct?
I believe so, yeah. Generally when they're contracts over a period.
So what's not to like?
Sorry?
What's not to like?
Oh, yeah. All right, are there any further speakers to the item? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to ask the question. We spend a lot of money with tree services, and Arbor Guide does do an exceptional, very professional service. They produce a lot of very good mulch, and there are certain places in the Shire, for example, Michael Tichborne Park and Sheoak Park, to name two in Jalora, which do need mulch for young native trees that are planted in those areas. Now, I'm mindful that fresh mulch does draw the nitrogen, but that's only from the immediate soil that it's actually in contact with, and that can be offset by putting down either fertiliser, nitrogen fertiliser, or
relevance, Councillor?
Relevance. So can we have an arrangement, or the person who's negotiating the trees that to be taken down with Arbor Guide to identify certain trees which can deliver or drop off loads of mulch at, for example, Michael Tichborne Park or Sheoak Park and other parks in the Shire, as that is
The Director of Infrastructure and Development.
Thank you, Councillor. Clause 2.6.3 within the contract allows the Shire to request the use of any of the mulch chippings at the Shire's discretion as it sees fit. This material can be delivered to any nominated site, noting that the most chip material is relatively green. I think your commentary around what it does in terms of nitrogen uptake, and is not fit for purpose within the formal gardens. There is an opportunity to use this material at East Road and other contaminated sites where mulch capping is a requirement for the mediation purposes. Disposal costs are at the of any of the mulch or any of the tree products are at the expense of the contractor. However, the removal of the material from the site is included within the pricing set terms.
Thank you very much, Director. I'd also like to note that on their website, Arbor Guide points out that they cooperate with the Geograph Catchment Council for the installation of possum boxes, and I was wondering if we might also, from a Shire perspective, keep that in mind particularly for areas that we've identified as habitat corridors.
Probably take that as a comment. Yeah.
But yeah, beyond that, I think it's it's a very good business to be in, tree lopping, and I appreciate the work that the officers have put in to get the tender, and endorse the officers' recommendation.
All right. Are there any further speakers to the item? No. Councillor Mogg, anything further? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried. Committee and Corporate Reports. 15.1, Access and Inclusion Plan 2025 to 2030. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor McCleary. Seconded, Councillor Dillon. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll move the motion as read.
Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'd like to expand on this item just a little bit because myself and Councillor Terrantroy were on the Access and Inclusion Committee for the first 2 years of our 4-year term. And if I was going to be pretty frank, I thought there wasn't a lot happening within that committee. Now, I don't know what's changed, but I'd like to congratulate whichever councillors maybe on there cracking the whip a little bit and maybe pushing for a little bit more because, as presented in the item, we're now looking at a sort of, nearly $500,000 budget to do various things along access and inclusion. I won't list them, they're all in the item, but it is good to see a bit more of a cohesive plan along these lines, and I think it's something all councillors would only happily get behind.
Are there any further speakers to that item? Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. I believe you were once on that committee. Yeah. So this plan's been reviewed in 2007, 2012 and 2017. And as a result of that, a lot of changes have taken place. And of course, most of us have family or friends who maybe fall into the category that need the consideration of access and inclusion. I think what has been proposed in this draft is pretty amazing. And I know both the Shire President and myself currently sit on that committee, and we are really pleased to work with some very talented people in the Shire and have come up with this. And I really feel that it's completely the direction in which we need to be going for access and inclusion and the betterment of our community members who are maybe less able than others. And I fully endorse what we have here in front of us. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councillors Dillon and Sharp. The only point, I agree that this is a very impressive report, very comprehensive, and I think it's great to see so much is happening. The only adjustment that I would like to propose, and it's not in the motion itself, but it's in the documentation that follows it, is on page 51, where it talks about grants, and the Shire currently offers a sports participation financial incentive scheme for its residents to attend state, national and international sporting events. The key recommendation from the AIP is to broaden this scheme to include high-performance Shire of Capel residents who qualify for similar levels of competition in STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, and I reckon that's a great idea. But I would also encourage the committee, the group, to consider students, or particularly young people, but all Shire residents who might excel in the arts, in humanities and in vocational education. So if we've got a brilliant bricklayer, he or she should also go to Sydney national, international competitions, and we should support them. If we've got a really good trombone player, same, they should play in the Australian Youth Orchestra. If we've got an aspiring young politician, they should go to Canberra for the Youth Parliament, and I think that we should support all of them in those endeavours. So arts, humanities and vocational education, I'd like to see them tacked in there as well. Beyond that, a very, very good report, and it's great to see that come to council.
All right, are there any further speakers to the item? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just note there's about $500,000 in here to be allocated across the next 5 years. Am I fair in assuming that council will see that as part of the SCP? Is that where that will fall into the long-term financial plan, or essentially where we've got quite a decent list in there, which is quite detailed and does give a pretty good picture of some of the initiatives over the next 5 years. But my question is, Mr. President, through the chair, essentially, where will that sit under the SCP, or will we see that come into the corporate business plan?
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Hello, thank you for your question, Councillor, through the chair. There's, as you can see through the officer's recommendation, there's I I suppose, a generalisation of operating and capital works that sit behind the actions that will drop out of that action plan over the term of the plan. And for instance, in the summary, it basically says that 300,000 for all abilities play equipment. So you'll see that come through with the public open space play equipment programme, the replacement of parks. And so when they replace the furniture in the parks, the accessibility design will be included in terms of how they turn over that play equipment and those types of things. So a significant amount of those will be included in programmes of works that will come, and then the operating elements will come through the CBP, but ultimately everything will have to link back to the strategic community plan, because obviously it's what's directing us that the needs are within the community, so we know we're serving those.
All right, are there any further speakers? No, I'll just say, as one of the members on the committee, myself and Councillor Sharp will take all the credit. No, just kidding. No, there's a great group of people behind this staff in the Shire that do some fantastic work, particularly Donna Sims. She's a trooper. But it's also our residents who provide feedback to documents like this that actually help us come up with something that actually means something. And I think the good thing about this plan is it's not trying to reinvent the wheel or try and get council to commit to a bunch of new money. A lot of the stuff is things we've got identified in other plans already. So, I mean, the director mentioned some of the furniture upgrades to playgrounds where it would be upgraded to be more accessible. Well, you know, there's another example in the plan around the staircase at the Central Lake Park from Bibra Luke. We've known for quite some time from the, as I'm sure some councillors here might remember, the Travia report into the wooden structures in Dalyella. It listed a number of those things which needed to be improved to actually meet universal access standards, but even just general people safety standards, because there was some dodgy stuff going on there. So some quick fixes were made just to alleviate a few concerns that might have come up then. But you know, it still didn't meet any universal access requirements. So as it's sort of mentioned here, you know, that staircase in particular is scheduled for replacement in 2030-31 anyway. So we're going to replace it anyway. Let's ensure it's actually fit for purpose for all our residents. And I think that's the thing about this plan, is that it ties that together. So residents in the district who need to focus a bit more on where they're going because of access issues they may have, they can actually see what's happening in the plan going forward. So, and then we'll tie that through into our community plans and core business plan, and most importantly, the long-term financial plan. But yeah, I just do want to thank Donna Sims for the work she has done. So I look forward to seeing the actions of this ticked off into the future. All right, any further speakers? If not, Councillor McCleary, do you wish to close?
I certainly do, Mr. President. Look, I commend those people that have been involved in developing this implementation plan and all the various costings in it. There's lots of dollars involved. We need to fit in with budgets, and that's part of the sensible and financially astute way we work. So I think that's been done in this plan. So I commend the officer's recommendations.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried unanimous. 15.2, ICT Strategy 2025 to 2030. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Terentroy, seconded the Deputy President. Councillor Terentroy.
I think this is a really good ICT strategy for 5 years, for 25 to 30. It's been done a lot of external consultation with the City of Busselton, Ashburton, Dardanup, the Shire of Harvey, Shire of Augusta River, Margaret River, and also Manji. So it's been well done because they've got lots of information that's been contributed from other local governments with their ICT plans. And so this working group allowed the staff to actually get a really good plan in place. And like any plan, it can be changed and tweaked as needed, because as we know, ICT moves so fast. Yeah, so I think it's wonderful. It also had internal consultation, of course, with the ICT ICT team here and the management team and the executive team. So I'm very happy to support this, and I think it's great to have a 5-year plan in place, a strategy to manage ICT development and continue, because it's ICT that gives us continuity of service to the residents. So if without ICT we wouldn't be able to do, or the staff wouldn't be able to do what they need to do for residents. Thank you.
The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I must say, I think our ICT team here at the Shire must be the envy of our neighbours, because while they've been doing this, they've been managing the implementation of our ERP. And I think it's really important to get the strategy right when you're going into that process of implementation of the ERP. But look, there's a couple of things I notice in there that I think are quite progressive in the corporate space or the enterprise space when it comes to ICT management. I think the BYOD, or the bring your own device stuff, as someone who would never use an employee designated device, good example tonight, that technology has really only allowed for that level of security on a privately owned device or a different device in the last 5 to 10 years. And to put in perspective what's happened in the last 5 to 10 years in ICT in this Shire, 10 years ago you used to receive your agenda pack printed in paper in a file handed to you on your front doorstep by the ranger. Not saying that wasn't a bad thing. That was it was a highlight of a Wednesday morning when the ranger would drop off your agenda pack. But these are actually quite progressive in the space of how enterprise uses IT. And I know council have asked a lot of questions over the years around integration of cloud services and stuff like that. And I think getting your strategy right about how you want to use cloud-based services as an organisation is really important when you're going into the process of what are you going to include in your ERP. Or we know what we're going to include in our ERP, but we also need to have we have to have those foundational views of how open and welcome are we to what we want to include in the cloud, or are we still trying to create sovereignty within the building? And I think there's a lot in there about that, and there's a lot in there about the BYOD stuff, and I think that's really progressive in this space. So I think it's a really good strategy. I think it really reflects quite well the team that we have in ICT here. I've got a lot of time and respect for our ICT team in the Shire, and I think that probably 10 years ago there was probably one person there dealing with setting up Microsoft accounts for new employees, and now it is a part of everything we do as an organisation. So even as an organisation, while the world might be moving rapidly, I think we've moved even faster to catch up. So well done. Really appreciate it. And also really appreciate the way that it's focuses on linking back to the SCP as well. Talking about, like with the inclusion plan, if you do these plans, where do they sit in the broader scheme of all these other informing documents or overarching documents? Really good. Might just need to see some dollar figures in there for a few of these things, but I presume we'll see the operating component and the capital component come through the SCP and the CBP when they need to appropriately. So yeah, I'm very happy to support the item and the officer's recommendation.
All right, are there any speakers for or against the item? Councillor McCleary.
I couldn't miss the opportunity, Mr. Chair, of thanking Councillor Shiano for reminding me of the stack of papers that used to turn up at my front door. This is an advancement in the way we deal with things. It's come a long way from when I first started on council. There's also some good points that are around in the community today. We spoke about them at the Audit Committee, and that was the cyber security that's taken a big step in part of the strategy, and also the way we'll do business. Thanks.
Are there any other speakers to the item? No, I'll just say, look, this is something that has come up in a few audits around the need for us to have a strategy around our ICT. I think we've had a pretty good, and the Deputy President's right, we've got a very good team, but having a bit of a formalised background to it, I think that's great. All the funding and policy will sit underneath this. I mean, this strategy is certainly high level, linking to our various plans. That's great to see. So yeah, very, very happy to see this come forward, and yeah, it's got my support. I suppose I'll just touch on the Rangers because it's been the topic point tonight, but it used to be my favourite thing because it's when you got all the good gossip and found out who couldn't keep their dogs in their yards. So we should just do it one time, you know, just for the former the manager of governance. That used to be her responsibility. She used to spend about 4 days, I think it was, putting all the paper together and organising it in the stacks for everyone to read. So I'm sure she'd be excited by that prospect. Anyway, I'll get myself back in order. Are there any further speakers to the item? Councillor Terrantroy, just close.
Just to close, because, yeah, it's only, I mean, I've been unelected councillor for 4 short years, and can I say, when I started only 4 years ago, that's how we got our agendas. And it's been wonderful to move to technology, getting our own tablets, being able to use Docs on Tap, and save the photocopier, because photocopying is so expensive. So it, yeah, saves a lot of paper. So I think it's great. Thank you.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Unanimous. 15.3, Ironstone Gully Falls Reserve Adoption of Management Plan, moved by Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Sharp. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr Shire President. I'd like to move it as printed and wholeheartedly support the work done by staff, and indeed I do need to comment that the staff member concerned, who's the author of this one, am I able to say his name? Jeremy O'Neill. When we had a briefing on the matter, he said, "Have you been out there?" Oh, I said, "Yeah," but I sort of pulled into the car park and kept going. So he provoked me into, shall we say, following it up. And what revealed to me is this absolute gem that needs a bit of polishing. It's an asset the Shire can never recoup from any other location, and it won't be able to recoup it if it doesn't manage it properly. And I was also, along with a number of the councillors and the Shire President, we were at the opening of the walking trail and the marking of the walking trail with the wonderful images and what have you. And I just think this is an immensely commendable outcome for a long-standing issue that's obviously gone on for some 20 years. I do note that, and what arises is a couple of questions. I do note that we've actually made a very modest provision in the budget to take the first steps, but I do note that the consultant's report has envisaged a 3-stage process with fairly comprehensive costings. And the question is, do we have any intention of including those into the long-term financial plan? Through you, Mr President.
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Through the Chair, as you will see in the budget component of the officer's report, it does state that there is an annual operating expenditure of around $12,000 there, obviously through site maintenance. The corporate business plan in the 25-26 financial year forecasts, I think it's around $20,000 there for the picnic table and the barbecue upgrades. And you're quite right, there are some bigger ticket items in terms of how we can advance that site moving forward, albeit for day use, and they will be included in the long-term financial plan based on Council's endorsement of this report today.
Thank you, through you, Mr President. And I, of course, presume, I shouldn't do, of course, but I assume those budget implications will arise in the event that this matter passes tonight. So I'll leave it at that, and I just say I'll give my full-throated endorsement to it. Thank you.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr President, and thank you for your words, Councillor Ferguson. I too went to the opening of the Ironstone Gully Falls walk trail. I took photos. I appreciated it from an artistic point of view as well as an environmental and nature point of view. This is an incredible asset to our Shire. The potential when you're out there is amazing. As Councillor Ferguson said, there is a little bit of polishing that needs to be done to this area, but the bones are there in all their glory. It's even though it's quite close to farmland, you feel as though you're in a very primitive and special place when you're walking along the trail. And I must commend the incredible artwork that has been provided from our local Indigenous groups. And also, I also want to thank the amazing work that the staff have done getting this here presented to us. I can only see it going ahead in leaps and bounds, and I'm pretty excited about the whole thing. Thank you.
Are there any speakers for or against? Councillor Dillon?
Very much for, Mr. President. Thanks for the opportunity. Look, as someone who was born and bred in this Shire, in fact, I vividly remember nearly falling to my death at the Ironstone Gully Falls as a knee-high young fella. This is a fantastic outcome. I know it's got a long history with the council in terms of, is it going to remain open to camping? Is it going to be, is the gate going to be locked? I think this is, Ironstone Gully Falls was in danger of being loved to death. I think this is the only outcome a responsible council could have come to. I believe we're in the medium term, we are going to look at other opportunities for camping areas in that part of the world, but I think we definitely, if we want, as we've all acknowledged, it's a fantastic gem in our community. We need to look after it. We needed to lock the gate. Day use makes perfect sense. I've got to admit, I haven't been out there since the interpretive walk trail has been implemented, and I must drag wifey out there and have a wander. We need to remind ourselves that there's an awful lot of weed infestation out there, and we as a Shire need to take a bit of time to maybe assess that and manage it. We need to manage it. But it is a fantastic place. I think this is the only outcome that makes sense for what is a very special place for locals, visitors and Indigenous people alike.
All right, any further speakers to the item? Councillor Terence-Roy?
I just echo Councillor Dillon's comments and Councillor Sharp's. I think that the damage done in the past by campers going further and further into the bush was just horrific, and this was happening for a long time before I got on council. And I think that protecting this gem, unpolished gem, so that future generations can enjoy it, it's our responsibility as stewards of our area, our Shire, to look after these beautiful places, but also for future generations that reside here. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers to the item? I'll say a few things in. I wasn't going to, but I suppose a bit like Councillor Dillon, as someone who's born and bred in Bleeds Burgundy, Capel. Look, I honestly got to say, I am actually quite disappointed with recommendation 2 there. I'll be supporting the recommendation, but it's such a beautiful site. And I really did want to see the camping activities run out there because it is a unique location in the district. But unfortunately, the southwest is not a small place anymore. And unfortunately, there are those who don't know how to behave in these areas anymore. And I was trying to hope we could look at something along the lines of the Alexander Bridge style that they've got down in Margaret River on a system, and the rangers are constantly checking in. But even then, I've been there at times when it seems people seem to become aware of the rangers' inspection schedule and seem to do everything in between those times. So look, it's probably just not an option at this site. Look, the management plan that's up for adoption tonight, it is exciting to see as a day use area. It's quite a rare site even amongst the southwest. I mean, there's not many natural falls you can freely find around the place unless a fair bit of rain falls. But this one gets going quite early. A lot of history, both Indigenous and colonial. That certainly needs to be celebrated and emphasised out there. But yeah, look, I mean, I'd like to see, but look, I look at opportunities though that we have around the district for camping activities. And I suppose the one reason why I can support it is there's some great stuff happening down the Tuart Forest, and there's even a few private operators around now that have really grown their potential. So enabling that for other parties and private operators to provide camping facilities and not the local government's probably actually the better way to go anyway. One less thing for us to do, but if we can facilitate that, then that's certainly something we should do. So particularly down that Tuart Forest, I think what the Ludlow Tuart Forest Group's got proposed down there is something exciting to see, and it'd be great to have that come to us in the near future. So look, I'm happy to support this. With a bit of hesitation around point 2 there, but seeing the damage and seeing what some people have done to that site, you really need to see why. Point of order?
I want to speak at some stage. You're not closing it out.
No. Councillor Ferguson's the mover.
I haven't spoken.
Yeah, I'm speaking. But look, I was coming to the end of my bit anyway, so yeah, look, I'll leave it there. All right. Councillor McCleary.
Sorry, I was just putting my hand up to get your attention, not to distract you from your conversation. Look, I totally agree. This is a great outcome. Camping, on the other hand, is something that we could probably look at in neighbouring properties. There's a lot of farm stays in communities now, and that can open up something. And I think developing this into a significant park will attract interest, and maybe some enterprising farmer or someone like that in the area will put something into council saying, can I have a farm stay, and doing it that way. So I think that's the way that you'll get to the outcome of that. And a bit of history with that, I can remember going out there way back in the early days on council with Councillor Jennifer Scott and touring around there, and then later on doing the initial walk through and working out where we'd put signs and what they might interpret. And it was quite an interesting walk. And now to see that come to fruition, I think that's a great outcome. So I commend the recommendation.
All right. Any further speakers to the item? The Deputy President.
Look, I'm actually on the fence about this, and I think maybe because I've been caught up in most of the conversations at this table that have been had, and I mean the report touches on them a little bit, but they have really focused around point 2 and the cessation of camping activities. The truth is camping activities have never been permitted at Ironstone Gully Falls because it's never been a recognised campsite by the Local Government Act, and therefore it's not permitted under the Caravan and Camping Act. So there is no cessation of camping activities. It's just that now suddenly we're actually going to start policing it because the illegal camping will still continue. It's always been illegal to occur. It's just that I remember the decision in 2020 was, we know it's happening, let's not make it a formal site because, all the risk and management, just leave it alone, leave the gate open. I don't know what changed between 2020 and now, but the gate's been locked every time I've gone. I went a couple of weeks ago. There wasn't any water yet in the falls. So I don't know if there's been a bit more rain since then. I know that Quinnanut Falls looks really good. I might plan a visit down there to have a look at that now. But, I go out there very often. I've been going out there as a kid. As soon as I got a licence, you'd drive out there, particularly when it was flying. It's an amazing site. It's got a lot of history. It's a key part to why the town of Capel was settled where it is, and that journey of the cricket field and all that. But this is essentially just saying that it's always been happening. Now we're going to start policing it, And I don't feel that that was necessarily what the community always wanted. I think when the gate got locked the first time, there was huge outcry about locking the gate. And why the gate is currently locked before council has actually endorsed the management plan is a little beyond me, given that I thought our position as an organisation, or as council, was to leave that open, leave it alone. Which then also sort of questions how, the trail progressed so, and I think that's been a great addition. Very long journey, 5 years to complete that current interpretive trail. I think it's a great part of the asset. But I just feel council's had a very strong opinion on how to leave this site alone over alone after the last 10 years. And it still seems to be consistently having development, plans, management plans come. I think where we are now, I'm happy with. I think the reality of the situation is that the illegal camping is creating issues at the site. I think it is a fantastic asset. I think it is a gem. I think it's worth investing into, and I think it's worth doing all of this. But I just don't like the process that this has been through, and I don't like the fact the gate's closed in some way, but maybe that's just because I remember when the gate got closed the last time. So I don't know if that was just bad timing that I was out there and the gate was closed for whatever reason. It was the week after the interpretive trail was opened. Maybe the decision was made internally to do that, but that's typically been closed anyway. It's always been illegal. We're just now saying that we're going to start noticing it and we're going to start taking action. And I think it is a good step to invest in the reserve. But this has been a very sore point for the council for a long time. And it's probably one of the only items you'll ever see where every time council's made a decision, they've said, bring it back in 3 years. And the staff do not miss that opportunity. Every 3 years, they bring it back. Because I can definitely tell the organisation really wants this to happen. And I think they're right in the way that there is so many challenges and grey areas when you've got camping areas that you don't police, and you've got, and then the fact of if you take it on as a actual day camping facility, there's so many other things you have to, meet, so many other requirements you have to meet, and it is challenging to manage. So this is the best outcome, but don't think that this, I don't really see how this changes a huge amount from what's currently happening, because it's already illegal. So thank you.
Any further speakers to the item? Not. Councillor Ferguson, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. I was a bit perplexed by which the Deputy President's comments there. It seems to me that point 2 draws a line under it and we move on. It also gives the Shire the capability and the responsibility to ensure that we enforce the motion of council. In other words, we get compliance. If you leave it out in the air, open up, we used to do it in the past, why can't we do it now? As far as the gate closure goes, I went out there several months ago and it was open. It's now closed, I think, as a consequence of trying to protect those particular signages that have been put in great effort and cost to all involved. And I don't have any issue with it being closed at all. And I don't have any issue with part 2. I think that just spells it out what it is. Let's go back a bit. This is a unique site that has both an Indigenous history and a settler history as it's described in the business paper. And that's very rare that you have actually that compatible history that's expressed in one single site. As to camping, it's not a large site. You allow a few campers into those trails around there, they're going to bulldoze their way into the native vegetation to find a site, because there really isn't any provision for camping. The amenities are inadequate. It's totally unsuited for camping. Totally unsuited for camping. On that basis, I will recommend the adoption of the motion. Thank you, Mr. Shire President.
All right, I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Unanimous. 15.4, permanent closure of unnamed road. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Sharp. Seconded. Councillor Noonan. Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, this has been a little bit of a contentious issue ever since the Blue Metal went down across that the 5 Mile Brook riverbed. I had a couple of local residents express their deep concerns about this and what the paving, even though it was Blue Metal, the paving of the area brought to the traffic issue of people going across the brook when it was dry, but more importantly, now that the water is flowing, driving through and disturbing what is actually classified as a conservation category wetland, and you know, the disruption it brings to that region. I feel that this is the right thing to do. I think there may be a few people who feel as though they are missing out on some access, and I hope there can be some clarification with how they now will be getting to their property. And I do realise that this was put in as a part of the fire mitigation, which I think is very, very important. So I feel though at this present time, this facility is abused, and I think this is the right thing to do.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I agree with Councillor Sharp. I think this is a very good move. I think that the residents whose properties back onto this unnamed road will welcome this development. I note that this is the start of the process, that there are several steps that it now has to go through, which include consultation with all of the residents who have a boundary with that property. It will, if it proceeds, then with the installation of gates at either end, I'm sure that will be welcomed by the vast majority of the people in that area and the broader community, who are also frustrated by the inappropriate use of that unnamed road, or that section of road for as a shortcut and a place to cut up. It's not people within who live adjacent to the properties, to the road. It's people coming from one side or the other, and it's a pity that they have shown a disregard for other people. You know, so I think that this is a good move. Thank you.
Are there any speakers against the item? Speakers for? No. Councillor Sharp, you wish to close?
No, thank you, Mr. President.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Unanimous. 15.5, request for tender 2509, supply and delivery of one 6x4 water truck. Is there a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion presented. Thank you.
Councillor Dillon.
Not much to add, Mr. President, other than to highlight that apparently it came in 32K cheaper than budgeted, which is always a good thing.
Are there any speakers for or against the item? No. Councillor Mogg, anything further? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried. Unanimous. 15.6, Corporate Business Plan 2024 to 2028, Quarter 4, April to June 2025, and end of year reporting to the 30th of June 2025. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? The Deputy President. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll move the motion as presented.
The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I'll just note, I think there's 8 carry forward actions from the fourth quarter of the CBP into the next financial year. And I think the classification around the buoying up sale yards and also the waste strategy, moving them into an in-risk territory, I think is very fair assessment. So, yeah, I think otherwise, generally a good report, and I think the organisation's been doing a good job as a whole in progressing the outcomes of the CBP. So, very good.
Are there any speakers against the item? Speakers for? Nope. Councillor Mogg, anything further? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Yeah. All right, it's 8 p.m, so I'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes.
Better go check fires.
All right, it being 8:12, I'll reconvene the meeting. All councillors back in attendance. Item 15.7, financial reports 31st of May 2025. Is there a mover? Councillor Mogg. Seconder. Councillor Terence-Roy. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion as presented.
Councillor Terence-Roy.
Just to like to note that there was the revised year-end surplus deficit, which was recalculated for 25-26 budget process in the amount of $2,127,572, and it's due to an underspend on the capital and operating projects, and has been redirected to the development of the 25-26 annual budget. But other than that, that's it. Thank you.
Are there any speakers to the item? Councillor McCleary.
Thanks, President. Probably more a question. This is the May results, and I'm kind of keen to know what the June results are, and in particular the light fleet, and whether we're looking like we're going to get closer to the budget number, or is it still going to be a substantial carryover?
The Director of Community and Corporate.
Thank you for your question. Through the Chair, so the June financials will come to August. You'll see June and July's in with that. The reason why we weren't able to present them is generally at the end of the financial year, we keep the books open for another 2 weeks or so. We can manage the accruals back into the previous counting period. And in terms of the fleet, and just seeing how those are coming through towards the end of that financial year, there will be a substantial carryover. And that is identified in the fleet programme that's included in the 25-26 budget.
Thank you. We have had discussions on that, and having a new fleet manager in the role should see that improve over the coming year, which is a good outcome. Apart from that, yeah, good.
All right, any further speakers to the item? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? It's carried. Unanimous. 15.8, the accounts paid during the month of June. Is there a mover for those accounts? Councillor Mogg. Is there a seconder? Councillor Dillon. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, Chair. I move the motion as presented.
Councillor Dillon. Is there any speakers for or against those schedule of accounts? Councillor Noonan.
I'd just like to comment that it was very nice to see 3 young people in the Shire recognised for their sporting achievements and receiving some assistance in going to represent their sports in greater, higher fields, higher planes. So that's the Access and Inclusion Sports Participation program, which is great, and I think that it's a real asset. The Shire has always punched well above its weight, I think, on the sporting field, so it's really good to see that continue.
Are there any further speakers to the accounts? No. Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried. Unanimous. 15.9, adoption of the annual budget and differential rates for 2025-2026. Move Councillor McCleary. Can you just state if you're moving the individual recommendation 1 or if you're moving them all on block?
I'd like to move it all on block.
So moving recommendations 1 through 9?
Yep.
Move Councillor McCleary 9 on block. Is there a seconder? Councillor Terence-Roy. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Chair for doing this. Look, we go through this every year, and it's great to see that we've been very financially astute in our process, and I thank the staff for preparing all these documentations. As we can see from the previous year, we've had a lot of carryovers, which are boosting the spend in this current financial year that we move into. And I think it's good that we make a decision tonight to move forward and get some of these projects actioned. We've also got some more staff coming on board later in the year, which is showing up in there, and a very good capital program and a bit of consolidation in future capital. I also note that within the body we are now going to get our long-term financial plan updated, brought to us in August, which will give us all that insight to know what we've got ahead of us, which is what we've got to look at for future budgets. But this is a very well-rounded budget. I'm looking forward to everyone supporting this and it going through in its entirety.
Councillor Terran-Troy.
I've got nothing to say, thanks.
Are there any speakers against the item? Speakers for? Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Shire President. Look, I'll be supporting the budget because it's a very comprehensive document and it's gone through the appropriate processes, that is initial adoption by council, public consultation, reporting back to council, adoption, and now in its final form. And enormous credit to the staff. The document is presented in an extremely comprehensive form, which if, you can read it line by line, you'll probably, get cross-eyed, but nonetheless, it's all there. And it's a very, very well presented document, and I commend staff on it. However, to my view, in my opinion, and I can be pilloried for this, it's nothing to do with staff, it's to do with the elected council. It's a document that lacks imagination, it lacks foresight, and it lacks, in my view, consideration for provisioning for the future. It's been argued that 3% is adequate to do what we need to do, and it's been argued by some that in fact it's more than that because we've got other properties, other rateable properties have come to our register, and that income is indeed makes it even significantly higher than the 3%. There is, of course, the argument that additional properties mean there's additional expense, but I won't dwell on that. To actually adopt the 3% budget increase in the current circumstances, when the local government's reportage indicates that that would be the bare minimum for a shire or a council or a city, whereas in fact we need more than the bare minimum. Now, it's true that during the process that myself and several other councillors tried to expand or develop in terms of the budget considerations in the Flora Council, that we were, in a sense, restricted or, in fact, inhibited by the fact that we didn't have options. The only option that came forward to Council was a 3%er, whereas, in fact, we had discussed in the briefings, in the preamble to that, increases of potentially 4 and 5%. But we didn't get that presentation. Now, there might have been a breakdown in communications, but the fact of the matter is that it meant that those of us who felt that more was needed didn't have the material or the ammunition to argue with. And also, a consequence of that, we were trying to bring forward consideration of strategic reserves, and the argument, and it's a pretty plausible argument, which I'll accept, that we didn't actually have that built into the long-term financial plan. So what arises from this is that I will express my disquiet, but I will support the motion because I think the staff have done an exemplary job within the constraints of what they had to work for. I look forward to the debate and discussions around the long-term financial plan and the fact that we're going to need more money. We can't be that super smart as a shire or local government area that we can do everything on less money than our adjoining and adjacent shires and councils. That can't be the case. The long-term implications of the workforce plan, which enable us to more comprehensively complete capital works programs, which has been a concern of my colleague, Councillor McCleary here, and legitimately so, and the adoption of a management process that's going to identify the work projects and deal with them in detail before we commence them or put them out for tender is very commendable. But we've got lots of other issues. We've had some discussion about the waste matters, about the waste contract, the implications around the changes to the FOGO movement, acceptance and disposition. We don't really understand what those costs are going to be, but one can always be assured they're going to be more. We're not going to go down. And there's other issues. I mean, Councillor Noonan has very justifiably brought up significant issues regarding remediation of reserves, and I think that conversation we had on the floor of council has stimulated a report, a very capable and comprehensive report that gives us some idea of now how we need to crystallise and how we need to cover and budget and create reserves for that into the future. So I will support it, but I have expressed my reservations. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any speakers against? Speakers for? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, in my usual way, fairly short and sweet. Look, I applaud Councillor Ferguson for saying what he said tonight, and as someone who voted against his motions a little while back, I understand where he's coming from and where Councillor Noonan and others were coming from regarding wanting to put a bit more into reserves for certain things. CHRMAP, remediation of sites. However, look, maybe there was a bit of a communication breakdown between some councillors and staff. I can be honest when I say, look, I thought we were going to get a couple of other options as well, but in saying that, I missed round one of the briefings on this rating and budget strategy. But let's look at this realistically. We're going for sort of 3 point this time around. Maybe it should have been a tick higher. The reval the previous year really whacked our residents and ratepayers. Let's not forget that. Even though we took the rate in the dollar down, it did whack our residents and ratepayers, and people are still hurting out there. I just want to remind residents and ratepayers, we, your councillors, we pay these rates too. And I need to remind some of our residents that if you live in Dalyellup, you can go out to Joshua Brook and have a barbecue. And Vicky Verka, you're not just paying for the assets and things you can utilise in your part of our wonderful shire, you can go anywhere. So I'd like people to focus less on their immediate surrounds and look at the bigger picture of our shire. That's probably a little bit of an aside. Look, I'm comfortable with this budget. I think it's not as grandiose in terms of, as we know, we're playing catch up with a lot of our capital works projects, and I think it's been a bit more modest in that regard, and probably just as well. But I think this is, as Councillor Ferguson said, a sound budget. Yes, maybe we could have tweaked a few different things. Maybe we should be a little more strident in what council wants from staff next budgetary cycle. But I think as it stands, this one is a very fair and solid budget.
Are there any speakers to the item for or against? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Councillors Dillon and Ferguson, for your comments. I agree with Councillor Ferguson in that I would describe this as a very mundane budget. It's very bleak. It's not very inspiring. The fact that we only had 2 submissions from the public in response to the budget, and the fact that both of them came from the same household, perhaps gives you an indication of the enthusiasm that the community felt about this budget. Now, so it's very different from last year, where the GRV did throw us a bit of a curveball, and the reason for that was because 3 years earlier, when we had COVID, they weren't able to do the GRV revaluation, so we were on a bit of a roller coaster. But let's face it, we've been on a kiddie roller coaster. We're still so much lower than the rates in our neighbouring local government areas, and that's going to that actually holds us back. It holds us back. We could have been a little bit more ambitious, I think, this time round. Some people in the community make a song and a dance about every, regardless, on Facebook Warriors, those sorts of campaigners. But it's worth pointing out that a 1% increase in rates for the average ratepayer is only $63 a year. Now, that $63 a year, break that down to a week, it's just $1.20, $1.30 a week. That's not even a quarter. Well, it's a quarter of a cup of coffee. So it's a cup of coffee a month for an individual household. That's 1%, a 1% rate rise. So for an individual household, it's not going to break the bank. But for the Shire, the collective impact of all of those $63 averages, it works out to $180,000 for the Shire, which is a significant amount of money, which we can do important things with. I think there is a genuine problem that we have to address in terms of the intergenerational equity for legacy problems, legacy issues, and that means the contaminated sites. I'm very pleased to see that that's going into the long-term financial plan, so it will, which means that, and that's coming to us in August, so that means that these things will be taken into account. I was very pleased to see earlier today there was a session of the Audit and Risk Committee, and that the Audit and Risk Committee has brought the issue of contaminated sites to the forefront of their considerations as well, because it's a risk that the Shire faces, and so it's good to see that there's that appreciation and awareness, and that's going to be addressed in the long-term financial plan as well. In addition, sports spaces. We have to provide for the growing community, particularly at Dalyellup. It's, arguably, I can appreciate the frustration that Bunbury has with providing regional facilities like the entertainment centre, the Southwest Sports Centre. We would be in all sorts of trouble if we weren't right next to Bunbury, and if our residents didn't make extensive use of the sporting facilities in Bunbury. We need to take a bit more of that on board, I believe, in our planning for the future. So I will support the budget. I absolutely endorse Councillor Ferguson's comments that the staff has done a lot of work on it. It's a very comprehensive document, and we really appreciate the work that they do. But I would hope that that in future years that we would be a little bit more ambitious as a group of councillors, and regardless of election cycles and all of that sort of stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you. I usually wait till everyone else has spoken before I speak, but I need to just jump in here because I've listened to a few comments here, and usually there's a little bit of a cynic in me that, you know, I sometimes let go, but I really just want to put it back in its place right now, but also just some of the comments that I've heard. Ambitious local governments aren't tied to what their rate increase are. It's tied to what they're delivering for their community in their budget. And this is, again, another ambitious budget that the Shire of Capel is looking at adopting. We've got the CHAR map. We've actually got some work and some money allocated in that to actually start developing those plans, which will inform the plan that council can then build into its long-term financial plan to actually start looking at mitigation opportunities for its coastline. It's got plenty money in the budget there for cemeteries master planning. We're even planning for the dead people. Capital Works program, we're bidding $2 million worth of a bridge, $13.5 million going towards our Dowler Multipurpose Community Youth Centre. That is the largest infrastructure project the Shire has ever undertaken, and we are delivering it in this financial year. The Capel Regional Equestrian Park Stage 2, we've got money in the budget to help them on that. Drainage, my favourite thing. We've got just under $500,000 in the budget to deliver our drainage upgrades, something that's very near and dear to my heart as a rural resident. $2 million for our parks, some of the best parks in the southwest. $2 million for our plant and fleet, making sure it's the most fit for purpose, up to date, and work safe, safe things. $5.5 million for our road network, which we need to keep going, keep maintaining. And you've even seen we've been recognised with that, and I love props when they're right next to me. But look, even our staff, look at our workforce plan, which we're adopting as part of tonight. All those new staff to come in and identify and address identified deficiencies that we have in the organisation. That is ambitious. We've done the review of our organisation. We've seen what the community wants to deliver. We're now actually putting the money behind it to actually deliver it and employ the people to do it. And second to that is the ERP. You know, and even tonight you've considered and you've adopted the ICT management plan. That sits behind there as well. This is ambitious. The ERP is one of the biggest investments in the organisation that's made in itself in quite some time, and it is going to be an absolute game changer in terms of community and council interaction, in terms of staff workflows, all of that. It's going to be fantastic. But also, it's been touched on the contaminated sites. We've got some things working in the background to actually properly identify and budget for those things, which hasn't been done in the past. It's been working through it's come through the Audit and Risk Committee now. It's also gone through the Climate Change Adaptation Committee in the past. We're actually finally starting to grab hold of that and say, right, we've got to put some money towards this. Let's build it into our long-term financial plan. Which brings me to the long-term financial plan. Yes, it needs an update. That's coming to us though, and it's coming to us in the next 2 months, I believe. Director, just give me a nod if I'm correct. Month. Coming to us next month. So how good's that? That's where we'll actually have the real good long-term stuff to take them and say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what your rates look like over the next 10 years. And we actually start selling it to them. CBP are coming to us next month as well. With that has all the real fine detail, little administrative things, but also some big stuff built into that we have. And in that, again, is the agribusiness precinct, getting the sale yards out of Boynup, unlocking that land there for residential development, but also having space for new industrial commercial land that builds on agribusiness in the district. And that will not only benefit us, certainly not denying that, but it will also benefit the region and Western Australia as a whole. Our land deconstraining business case, we're still pushing for that, and that's still identified as one of our major advocacy pieces, and is still identified in our corporate business plan, which will come to us next month. So absolutely we need to keep pushing those things, because that's where the future development of our residential commercial land is sitting. So certainly want to keep pushing that. At the end of the day, I don't care what the City of Busselton's doing, Shire of Dardanup, Shire of Donnybrook-Ballingup, the City of Upper Dalyallup, Lower Eaton, Shire of Harvey. I don't care what they're doing. I only care about what the Shire of Capel's doing, and this is a beautiful budget. Yes, the rate increase is 3%, the lowest in the Southwest region, probably one of the lowest in all of the state. You know, but we did have a hard year with our rates last year in the community. There's no denying that, and that was addressing a long-term issue of structural rate policy. It needed to be done. We've done that. This council, I can put on my heart, hand on my heart and say, I'm very proud that this council has made hard decisions over the last 2 and 4 years. Very hard decisions, and it's got a lot more to do. because no matter what the rate increase was this year, whether it was 3 or 5 that's been floated around, bringing in these contaminated sites, bringing in the char map, bringing in all that is going to have huge cost implications. So whether we go 2% extra this year or 2% extra next year, it's going to need a lot more to work on it. And there's a hell of a lot of responsibility, particularly in that char map space, which sits on the Commonwealth and sits on the state government. These coastal issues don't just start or stop at local government boundaries. So that's where I want to focus that advocacy on, is making sure the state, who's the one that's actually mandated local government do this, again, local government doing the work of the state on its behalf at no cost to the state. Again, it is local government picking up the tab. It's local governments leading the charge in fixing the FOGO issues, which the state has done absolutely nothing to address. And I'll even circle back to the agribusiness precinct. The state needs to step up and support the Shire in its efforts to resolve the issues at the Boyne Up sale yards. And I'm probably getting pretty close there, but anyway, resolve the issues at Boyne Up sale yards, but then support the Shire in relocating them to a fit-for-purpose location that meets animal welfare legislation, that meets the community expectation, that meets industry expectation, but has space for industry to complement it and grow around it. So I don't want to hear another comment that this budget is ambitious. It isn't ambitious. It is. It is a good budget. It is sound financial management. It's made some hard decisions. We've got a lot more to do. But I really commend it to the council and I commend it to the community. And I think you've heard what my media release is going to sound like in the next few days. I'll leave it there. Are there any other speakers on this item? The Deputy.
And you know what, Mr. President, you just read my notes off my pad here that I've got. I've written the word ambitious, I've circled it, I've written ERP, DMC, YC, all these wonderful things. So I won't recap, but I will say you were getting very close to calling it the big, beautiful budget. And that's what it is. It's a big, beautiful budget. And I 100% wholeheartedly agree with you, Mr. President, that this is a big, beautiful budget because it is ambitious. And it may not address some of the ideas at the table and some of the things that are appearing, as these short-term issues, and waste is one of those that comes to mind quite frequently, and contaminated sites. But the truth is that, the stuff that comes together to build a budget, a big, beautiful budget like this, takes years. It takes years. And it takes long-term financial plans. It takes corporate business plans. It takes strategic community plans. It takes inclusion and plans. And I think one of the things that I can take away from the discussions that we have had around the budget, be it in this meeting or previous meetings, is that while I may disagree or have argued with some councillors at time around when is the right time to have the conversation about these things, I don't necessarily think that this has been the time to have the conversation about these things, but I do 100% agree that they're things we have to have conversations about. I do think they need to be on the agenda because I do think that they are going to be the future challenges that we face in the Shire, and we are going to have to go out on a limb at some point and really talk about the risk associated to the risk to council and the Southwest when it comes to things like waste. But in the time that we have now, we look at last year's GRV reval, a 14.5% increase in yield, and the impact that had on rates notices last year. And I think council made a really good decision in that very difficult environment last year. But I don't think that you can go forward without thinking about that tonight because, we've got a 3% residential increase, but the truth is that's not 3% across the board for commercial and other places as well. And there is a growth. We're working with the 5% yield. And I think that is a good place to be in when you come back and you look at where we were last year. And I empathise with our neighbours who are going through similar at the moment. I mean, the City of Bunbury's had a GRV revaluation, and interestingly, they've gone back to a differential rate, and their rate in the dollar will be lower than ours going forward. And we may not have the lowest rate in the dollar in the region anymore. I think they're looking at 0.080 something. But what I want to make this point is that we can't compare ourselves with each other because we have very different needs, we have very different challenges, and we also have very different rating cycles in the way that we're all GRV revaluations happen at different times. It was really unfair when we were, we were getting, all the attention last year. We were going through that reval along with Donnybrook. It'd gone probably 6 years since then. But look, I think I'm very comfortable with where we are. I think the ideas that have been brought to the table in these 2 budget meetings have been fantastic ideas. They've got to stay on the agenda. But I don't for one bit think that the budget that we have in front of us is mundane and not ambitious. I thank the Shire President for getting so close and putting that in my head, because it's not going to go away. But I think one of the other things on top of the DMCYC is that what I would call a very ambitious workforce plan. Addressing some of the major challenges within the workforce, and also the workforcing requirements for the delivery of the DMCYC. I mean, it is the largest infrastructure project the Shire's delivered, and we're very supportive, very thankful for the support that we've had from state government to deliver that. But that idea didn't come from state government. That idea was in a long-term financial plan. That plan was always there, and we pull that out and go to state government and say, this is where we want to be in 5 odd years. We need your support. And that's how those things happen. So I think with that, I did also find the missing $850,000 in the program of works for paths. I can see now that Yolinda only has $30,000 assigned to it, and that's just for design. So, if you're really diving into comparing both of the programs of works, but look, as I'm very happy with where we are, I do wholeheartedly believe it's an ambitious budget. And maybe even last year's budget, I might say, was a little bit too ambitious, because we've got a lot of carry forward projects, and it's not surplus, but it is a fact that we are in a climate at the moment where we can't tend to get all the money out the door for many different constraints, and having capital works programs that are achievable is important as well, because you shouldn't be rating your ratepayer or your rate base for stuff that you can't deliver. So of course, that surplus from last year is not cash in the back of our pocket. That's projects that we need to carry forward. So, we still got to get that stuff done. Maybe we're a little too ambitious at some points, and that's how those sort of things happen. But you've got to adjust to the climate. So, look, very happy to endorse the big, beautiful budget, Mr. President.
Are there any further speakers to the item? If not, Councillor McCleary, do you wish to close?
You betcha. Look, it's a bit hard to follow that last few acts there. Look, I do agree. It is ambitious budget, and we're in the face of consolidation. We're building up on our ERP, which is will progress that, and that's what we understood. That was going to be the technical upgrades and things like that that improve our efficiencies in the thing going forward. We're getting our asset management in place. We've got fleet management in place. You sit there and you make all these comments about a few things, but yeah, look, it is ambitious, and we've got it, and we're in a tight budget. This is our budget. I don't care what you say, what Bunbury's doing, what Margaret River's doing. This is our budget. We have brought it forward to this stage, and I hope you approve it, because this is good. I'm not going to call it what you called it. It's just wrong, but yeah, it's about getting the physical things done. Now, we had a bit of a slow year last year for all the other resourcing issues and things like that, and now we're in a nice place. I'd call it a sweet spot that we're in, and we're going to move forward on it. And I commend the staff for all their work in this. We've had more recently the contaminated sites thing. Yeah, sure, it was a good thing to bring up, but we found an avenue to get it through without adding that dollars yet. So now we're going to understand it. We're going to get our long-term financial plan draft in a couple of weeks, actually, early August. And that's what we're going to work with. That's how it works. We go through step by step, building up our budgets. We understand what our long-term directions is, and that sets all the future rates. We don't get caught in this thing, oh yeah, I think we'll chuck it up a bit more. But so I commend this budget, and I think we should put it through. And look, it's great. I can't say any more because 2 people have really highlighted so many things in it. Well done, you guys. Thanks.
All right, with that, I'll put it to the vote, just reminding all members you are voting on all 9 recommendations at once. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. New business of an urgent nature. There is none. Public question time. There being no one in the gallery, we'll move on. Motions without notice. There's none. No. Item 19, notices of motion for consideration at the next ordinary meeting of council. No. There's no items for consideration behind closed doors, and there being no further business on the agenda this evening, I will close the meeting at 8:47. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance.